The abandoned ward. While traveling through a country in Latin America, I sprained my ankle badly after a careless misstep. The pain didn't subside the next day, so locals recommended a hospital on the outskirts of town. The hospital sat on a hill, looking old and worn, but the signs were new, and the reception area seemed functional. "I'm having trouble walking. Can I see a doctor?" The receptionist, expressionless, nodded and handed me a form to fill out. "Go to the second floor, last room at the end of the hall." There was no elevator. I had to drag my aching foot up the stairs. Something felt strange. The place was too quiet. I saw no other patients, no nurses moving about. Still, at the end of the hall on the second floor, there was indeed a door marked examination room. I knocked. No response. Hesitantly, I pushed the door open. Inside was an old examination table, rusting medical instruments, and no one. What? This was the room the receptionist told me to go to, but there was no doctor, no nurse. I turned to leave. Then, thump! A curtain at the back of the room shifted slightly. Someone was there. "Excuse me, I was told to..." I stopped mid-sentence. Through the small gap in the curtain, I saw fingers. Pale, unnaturally long fingers. Slowly they began pulling the curtain open. A cold wave of dread washed over me. I stepped back, and then the door behind me slammed shut. I grabbed the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. Locked. Creak? From behind the curtain, something was moving, but I couldn't see it. I pounded on the door. "Someone, let me out." No answer. No footsteps. Just the slow, deliberate rustling of the curtain. Scratch. Scratch. A faint sound right by my ear, like something crawling toward me. I was trapped. Then the door burst open. A doctor in a white coat stood there. "What's wrong?" His face was blank, cold. I pointed to the curtain. Someone behind there?" The doctor glanced over, then said flatly, "There's no one there." I couldn't respond. But I had seen something. I knew it. I want to leave." I grabbed my bag and limped out of the room. As I made my way down the stairs, I heard the doctor's voice behind me. That ward was supposed to be closed. I froze for a second, but didn't look back. I rushed out of the hospital without another word. The next day, I asked my hotel owner about the hospital. That place, the second floor was shut down years ago, but I was there yesterday, in the examination room. The hotel owner's face stiffened. "You saw a doctor?" "Yes." But something felt wrong. The owner fell silent, then murmured, "The last doctor in that ward disappeared along with a patient." I thought back to the doctor's face, his empty eyes, his cold, mechanical tone. And what was behind that curtain? The guest in the mountain hut. While traveling in Japan, I was caught in an unexpected storm while hiking. I was still far from the mountain hut I had planned to reach. Checking my map, I saw that there was a small emergency shelter nearby. That's a relief. I hurried toward it and found what looked like a well-maintained mountain hut instead. When I pushed open the door, I was greeted by warmth. Inside, a wood-burning stove was already lit. almost as if someone had been expecting me. "Excuse me, I'm taking shelter here for the night," I called out just in case. No response. But then I noticed something strange. A futon was already laid out in the corner of the room. "Is someone here?" I glanced around, but there was no sign of anyone. I sat by the stove drying my wet clothes. The hut was stocked with basic supplies: water, food, and blankets. Probably emergency rations for hikers. But something felt off. The food wasn't old or preserved. Instead, there were fresh rice balls and bread, as if someone had bought them just yesterday. "Is someone staying here?" Still, the hut remained silent. Checking my watch, I realized it was past 10 p.m. I needed to leave early in the morning, so I crawled into the futon and closed my eyes. Late at night, clatter. A small noise woke me up. The fire in the stove had gone out. The air inside the hut was freezing, but more than that, I felt someone there. "Is someone here?" The moment I spoke, creak, the tatami mat beside me made a soft sound. I forced myself to open my eyes. Darkness, nothing visible. But then, the corner of my blanket slowly lifted. I couldn't move. I could barely breathe. And then, something cold touched my ankle. Ugh! I bolted upright and turned on the light. The room was empty. But beside my futon, there were footprints, wet, bare footprints, and they weren't mine. Morning came, and the storm had cleared as if it had never happened. I stepped outside and looked around. No sign of another person. Relieved, I prepared to leave. Then I noticed something. By the entrance, where nothing had been last night, a hiking logbook sat neatly on a small wooden shelf. Curious, I flipped to the last page. My name was already written there. And just beneath it, another name had been started but was left unfinished. The Narrow Alley. While traveling in Japan, I enjoyed wandering through hidden back streets, the kind only locals knew about. In an old town with preserved historic streets, narrow paths twisted and turned like a maze. One evening, after visiting a small shrine, I stumbled upon a narrow alley. It was just wide enough for a person to squeeze through, and at the far end I could see a faint light. Maybe it's a shortcut. Without much thought, I stepped inside. The alley was longer than I expected, with several turns along the way. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. I glanced over my shoulder. The entrance had disappeared. A slight panic crept in, but I figured there must be an exit ahead. The light was still visible in the distance. However, as I continued walking, the alley grew narrower and narrower. Soon my shoulders were brushing against the walls. This is getting too tight. I decided to turn back, but there was no path behind me. The way I had come was now nothing but a solid wall, as if the alley had sealed itself shut. A chill ran down my spine, and then I noticed the ground was wet. That's strange. It hadn't rained. Yet, water was seeping through the cracks. Drip. The puddle rippled slightly. Something was moving. I held my breath. There was a presence just beyond the wall. Then, shh, shh. A sound. Something crawling closer through the darkness. Through a tiny gap in the wall, I saw blackened fingers emerge. I had no escape. Desperately, I pushed forward. Suddenly, a torii gate appeared before me. The moment I stepped through, the air shifted. I turned back. The alley was gone. I hurried away without looking back. The next day, I asked a local about the alley. "Oh, that place? It shouldn't exist anymore." "But I was just there yesterday," I insisted. The old man's expression darkened. "People who enter that alley usually don't come back." A chill ran through me. If I hadn't found that Tory gate, I might have been one of those people who never returned.